Good day, future RMTs. Welcome to the discussion of clinical laboratory law. To start with, our learning outcomes are as follows. Number one is to recall the provisions of RA 4688 and of course the other administrative orders in relation to the practice of the profession and to analyze legal issues and concerns related to the law. Start with, let's discuss what is Republic Act 4688. Republic Act 4688 is also known as an act regulating the operation and maintenance of clinical laboratories and requiring the registration of the same with the Department of Health, providing penalty for the violation thereof and for other purposes. Take note guys that Republic Act number 4688 was approved in June 18, 1966. Okay, it was approved in June 18, 1966. Section 1 of RA 4688 is all about the requirement or all about the mandatory registration of all laboratories, be it a laboratory for animal, be it a laboratory for humans. No? All laboratory examining body fluids must be registered to the Department of Health. No? The Department of Health and the Department of Health, particularly the Bureau of Research Laboratories, is the one given by this act to enforce the law. Okay? So the license to operate or the LTO, no LTO, not Land Transportation Office, but rather LTO is referred as the license to operate, no, is valid for a span of a year. Sabi nang kasi every year, no, nagkakameron ng renewal of this certificate of this license to operate. Okay. What else? No. Again, the license to operate is provided, no, or issued by the Department of Health, particularly the Bureau of Research Laboratories. Okay? Now, under the law or under Section 1 of 4688, there are some laboratories who are exempted in the uh, application or in the obligation to register, to be registered. No? These are government hospital laboratories doing minimum laboratory examinations. No, they are exempted in performing or in registering their laboratory. However, there are just minimal, or if as a matter of fact, most of the government hospitals are performing tertiary laboratory or their capacity is tertiary laboratory. So there are only few, no, government hospitals. Siguro, to name a few, those who are in the depressed areas are those who are with minimum laboratory examinations. Okay, the next slide is that I'm going to present is a slide showing to you the application form, no, to application for license to operate to a clinical laboratory. If I may zoom. Okay, so the name of the laboratory is required. Let's say, for example, if this is a hospital-based laboratory, then the name of the hospital. Or if this is a freestanding, let's say, for example, high precision, to be a good example, or uh, what else? LDC, something like that. Those are freestanding laboratories. So that is the name of the laboratory, the complete address of the laboratory, the telephone number, the head of the laboratory. Now, let's make it clear, no? In the preceding sections or in the preceding slides that I'm going to present to you today, no, we will define who is the head of laboratory. Most of you knows that the head of the laboratory is the chief medical technologist. But as a matter of fact, a chief medical technologist is just the head. Or what I mean is the right term is the senior or the highest level of medical technology in the laboratory. he or she is not the head of the laboratory, because the head of the laboratory that we are pertaining to here is the physician, particularly the pathologist. So the name of the owner, if the name of the owner is a registered medical technologist, then he or she is the owner, but not the head of the laboratory. I hope it's clear. Next thing is the classification according to ownership, whether it's a government or private. Again, in the next slides, I'm going to discuss this to you. What is the difference between a government, a private, a function, a clinical or anatomical or both, whatever it is, a institutional character, institutional based or freestanding, and then service capacity, whether it is a primary, secondary, or tertiary, or a limited. And then status of application, if this is just initial or renewal. So that is the uh, application form for license to operate for clinical laboratory. And it is uh, filed, no? Or fina-file po ito or sinasubmit in the OH, particularly in BRL, together with the necessary requirements and documents needed. The list of the personnel, what are their highest educational attainment, PRC number, PRC ID, if they are a licensed professional. Okay. And then this is an example of a license to operate. And remember guys, no, nakasulat dito na pursuant to Republic Act 4688 and Administrative Order number 2007-0027, known as the Revised Rules and Regulation, no, and Regulation of Clinical Laboratories in the Philippines. Ayan, this is the head of the laboratory. This is what I'm telling. The head of the laboratory is Yvette Lilibel A. De Maisip, MD, a registered physician, no? And then the owner is Maria Vilma Cunanan. Validity from Feb 17, 2010 to December 31, 2010. A 1-year validity. Okay? And then that needs to be renewed every year. Okay? Provided also in the certificate or the license to operate are the capability to do the specialized hematology, specialized clinical chemistry, special microscopy techniques, and blood typing. Okay? Again, take note, guys, it is a must to all laboratories that we must display their license to operate in their clinical laboratory. Now, yan. So, 1-year validity. Section 2 of RA 4688 is the head of the laboratory. It is clearly stated that the head of laboratory is a licensed physician, particularly a pathologist. No? Take note that there is no renewal or no renewal shall be granted unless the laboratory is under the supervision of a physician, particularly a pathologist. But in administrative order, no, in one of the AOs of the Department of Health, they allowed um, physicians other than pathologists to be the head of the laboratory if there are no pathologists available in the local or in the area. Okay? So section 3 of 4688 is all about the Secretary of the Health is the one that will provide the license to operate, particularly no, through the help of the Bureau of Research and Laboratories. Take note, guys, that these two persons, the Secretary of the Health and the Director of Bureau of Research and Laboratories, shall be in charge with full responsibility of strictly enforcing the law. And what is the law? 4688. And the other administrative orders pertaining to the clinical laboratory, operation of clinical laboratory. Now, Section 4 of 4688 is about the sanctions or penalties. No? Not less than 1 month, but 1 year, not more than 1 year imprisonment, and not less than 1,000 nor more than 5,000 pesos fine, no, for those who violated RA 4688. In the succeeding slides, I have there the list of violations, and these are the fines. The fine may be, or the penalty may be imprisonment, not less than 1 month, not more than 1 year, or the fine. This penalty may be both, parehas, pwedeng parehas, depending on the discern or the decision of the court. Now, like what I'm saying, there is also another rule or law pertaining to the clinical laboratory, and this is Administrative Order number 2007 series number 2007-0027. Okay, this administrative order was signed by Department of Health Secretary, who is Duque, no? Francisco Duque. Uh, Naging Secretary of Health na si Duque before. Ngayon, siya ulit. Okay? So again, this is revised rules and regulation governing the licensing, regulation of clinical laboratories in the Philippines. Moving forward, we have here the classifications of laboratories. Under AO 27, series of 2007, the classification of laboratories is defined based on these four classification: based on ownership, based on function, based on institutional character, and based on service capacity. So what does it mean? If based on ownership, it means, is it a laboratory governed or managed by a government or government hospital, or by the government? Okay? Uh, a public hospital in some words, or is it a private laboratories? Now, if it's a government laboratory, it can be managed by national government or regional government. Let's say, for example, Batangas Medical Center is a national government hospital. Before, this is a regional hospital. But now, this is a Batangas Medical Center, no? A national government hospital. Batangas Medical Center is a hospital, not only, no, even though the name use the word Batangas, it is not only for Batangueños, but this is a hospital, a uh, government hospital, a public hospital, wherein most of the patients are coming within the region. No, there are patients from Laguna, there are patients from Quezon, there are patients from Marinduque. Yes, don't be shocked. There are patients from Marinduque, and there are patients from Mindoro. If you imagine, this is the nearest government tertiary hospital in the region or in their area. Could you imagine a patient from Mindoro needs to be traveled by sea just to have the nearest government hospital? Kompleto naman sa Batangas Medical Center. But yun yung problema dun, di ba? The patients are coming from uh, far places. Example, Mindoro. I am not discriminating people from Mindoro, but just to imagine the the scarcity in a public hospital in the Philippines, from one province going to another province. And what is sad to hear is those who are coming from far lang areas, they have to travel by sea just to go to a government hospital. May mga hospital naman doon. Pero kung kailangan ay isang government hospital, sa dala ng pangangailangan dahil hindi afford ang isang public hospital, ang isang private hospital, they have to go to Batangas Medical Center. When I was an intern at BMC, we have one patient who came from Albay. Alam ko nagulat ka because when I was there doing the laboratory protocol or doing the laboratory procedure of the patient, I saw in the request form that the patient came from Legazpi, Albay. Yun yung malapit na sa kanya, kaya dito siya pumunta. May mga government hospital naman dun, may Bicol Medical Center. Pero kung may wala dong area, and since this is a government hospital, mura, 'no? Wala kang babayaran minsan. PGH is also a government hospital, okay? This is based on ownership. Yung mga laboratory procedures here also mura, okay? So pag sinabi natin government laboratories, it is maintained, managed, partially, or by or whole by a national or regional government. Alam mo yung masakit sa isang government hospital, hindi 1:1 yung bed. Sometimes, yung bed 1:3. Nakaupo ko na lang yung pasyente. How could you relax? How could you have your complete bed rest if you are 3 in a bed? Okay? Now, kapag private laboratories naman, it is established, operated, and maintained by an individual corporation or association. Example, St. Cabrini. St. Francis Cabrini Medical Center is a private hospital, and there is a private laboratory in St. Francis Cabrini. Asian Hospital and Medical Center is another example of a private laboratory. Okay, so this is based on ownership. Next thing is based on the function. Is it a clinical laboratory or clinical pathology or anatomic pathology? Don't be confused because there are some hospitals using the word clinical pathology or pathology department instead of laboratory department. It can be, no? And when you said pathology, no, nice to know lang, if you said pathology, it comes from the Greek word phatos, okay? It comes from the Greek word phatos. And phatos means suffering. Okay? Logos, ibig sabihin study. The study of suffering. No? Phatos is a Greek word which means suffering. Okay? So clinical pathology or clinical laboratory is clinical chemistry, hematology, immunology, microbiology, immunology and serology, clinical microscopy, endocrinology, molecular biology, cytogenetics and toxicology and therapeutic drug monitoring. Okay? Kapag naman anatomical pathology, surgical, immunological, immunohistochemistry, to be exact, histopathologic, cytologic, autopsy procedures, forensic and molecular pathology techniques. Okay? Minsan, an hospital can be a clinical and a pathology, a clinical and anatomic. A laboratory can be a clinical pathology at the same time anatomic pathology. Or a laboratory can only be a clinical pathology or can only be a anatomic pathology. Okay? I hope it's clear. Now, based on institutional character, this is what I'm telling a while ago. Is it a institutional based laboratory or a freestanding laboratory? Madali lang. Kapag sinabi natin institutional-based laboratory, which means it is a laboratory within a hospital, within a clinic, within a school or medical facility. Yes, you heard it right. A school can have a clinical laboratory. Okay? Uh, one best example is Lyceum Batangas. They have a primary laboratory in the school wherein their patients or their students. Lalo na pag may internship or lalo na pag meron silang annual medical check-up. Meron silang ganun. Institutional-based laboratory, a school-based laboratory. Okay? Medical facility, halimbawa, mental hospital, something like that. Okay? Uh, clinic, so alam niyo na naman yun, mga clinic. No? and then hospital. Pag freestanding, not affiliated in any institution, sila yung mismong organization. Example, best example or a widely known freestanding laboratories in the Philippines is high precision diagnostics. Kilala yan, no? Meron sa Santa Rosa, meron sa Muntinlupa, meron sa Alabang, meron sa ganto, ganto, ganun. May madaming high precision diagnostics. Okay, so based on service capacity, we have here the primary laboratory, the secondary laboratory, and the tertiary laboratory. So pag sinabi nating primary laboratory, you are only limited to routine hematology. When we said routine hematology, it includes the CBC, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and differential count. Okay? Quantitative platelet determination, routine urinalysis, routine fecalysis, and blood typing. However, not all primary laboratories are capable of performing blood typing. Based on the administrative order series 0027 series of 2007, the only laboratory who can perform blood typing are those primary laboratory which are hospital based. Okay? Next, secondary laboratory naman. Secondary laboratory is capable of doing all things that a primary laboratory can perform, including routine clinical chemistry procedures. Routine clinical chemistry procedures includes the FBG or FBS. It means that the fasting blood sugar or the fasting blood glucose. WN, tulad nga natin, FBG or FBS, BUN or blood urea nitrogen, BUA or blood uric acid, creatinine, and total cholesterol. Okay? Next, a secondary laboratory is also capable of doing cross-matching, gram staining, and KOH preparation for fungal elements. However, like blood typing, cross-matching, and gram staining as well as KOH can only be performed in secondary hospital which are hospital-based. Okay? And lastly, tertiary laboratories are laboratories who are capable of doing the activities of a secondary laboratory, including special chemistry analysis. Let's say, for example, thyroid analysis or uh, immunological test, okay? Specialized hematology, including coagulation, D-dimer, something like that. Microbiology, including culture and sensitivity. All right. So like what I've said, I'm going to present to you the violations of RA 4688 and those rules, regulation, and commission by the following act. So let me allow me to read it this to you. Number one, refusal of any clinical laboratory to participate in EQA. EQAP. What is EQAP? EQAP stands for External Quality Assurance Program. External Quality Assurance Program, sometimes referred as the NEQAS, no? Conducted by the designated NRL. NRL stands for National Reference Laboratory. Okay? And other external proficiency program approved by the Department of Health. Take note, guys, that NEQAS or the External Quality Assurance Program is sometimes referred as the proficiency testing or proficiency program. Okay? Issuance of report orally or in written in a whole or portions thereof which is not in accordance with the documented procedure approved by the head of the laboratory. Permitting an authorized person to perform technical procedures. Let's say, for example, um, laboratory aid. No, you allow the laboratory aid to perform cross-matching. Ay, patay tayo dyan. demonstrating incompetence or making consistent errors in the performance of the clinical laboratory examinations and procedures, deviation from the standard test procedure, including the use of expired reagents. I know some hospital, not some, I know one hospital na nagkameron ng problem, no? Regarding dito, expired reagent. Okay? Not to mention the hospital, but what happened is that they found out that they are using expired reagents. Hindi katanggap-tanggap yun. No reporting and release of erroneous results. If you are familiar with what is posted in the Facebook just recently regarding the COVID-19 pandemic or regarding the RT-PCR or real-time polymerase chain reaction. Okay? Gusto ko lang matandaan, maging maliwanag po to sa inyo ha. Yung RT-PCR, ito po ay real-time, ito po ay reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. Yung R na maliit, P, PCR, itong ibig sabihin nito ay real-time. Okay? Sometimes Q, Q, RT-CPR. Ibig sabihin real-time. No? Itong isa, RT, reverse transcriptase. So para hindi tayo malito, ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng dalawa? Ano ba yung, bakit yung isa maliit, yung isa malaki? So that's the difference of that. I am not here, I'm not anymore to discuss. But if you want me to know, if you want me to discuss that, just ask me when we have our synchronous session, and I'm going to differentiate to you what is the difference between a real-time PCR and a uh, reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. Now, anyway, now what I am saying is, if you were aware what happened in a this is a post, a Facebook post from a certain patient from St. Luke's, if I am not mistaken. The patient tested positive, no, in the PCR. So positive for SARS-CoV-2, the causative agent of uh, COVID-19. But having said na positive siya, ano yung nangyari? So she was depressed, worried, about about her condition kasi positive eh, 'di ba? Eh, she has to go abroad for some reasons. I just I am not just familiar with what is his or her reason. So she was worried because she is positive for COVID. And then immediately he had a second opinion from the other hospital. And the hospital was Chinese General Hospital, CGH, not Chinese General Hospital. She tested negative. It was a question to her the validity of the result. She was claiming that the results of her swab from the first hospital was an erroneous result. Kasi negative eh. We cannot remove or we cannot eliminate the possibility that that is an erroneous result. It can be a clerical error. It can be a technical error, no, a post-analytical error, or it can be a analytical error. We cannot remove the chance of having an erroneous result in her PCR test. Why? I am not saying na tama yung ginawa niya. We are just balancing the situation. Bakit pwedeng mali? You know guys, here in the Philippines, there is no standard yet. There is no quality assurance program yet for PCR test. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng mali nga talaga yung resulta. Kasi wala pang standard eh. Okay? Pwedeng mali nga talaga yung result. But The other way or the other side of the story can be during the time that she had her swab, there is really the presence of the virus. And when the result was released, wala na yung virus. Or magaling na siya sa virus. Wala nang replication na naganap sa virus. Eh kasi pinaulit nila din dun sa other country na pinagpuntahan niya, negative din yung result. And he was claiming that the result from the St. Luke's Hospital is erroneous. Grabe daw yung ginawa sa kanya. If that is really an erroneous result, then that hospital, particularly that laboratory, can be sanctioned under the law. Erroneous results. Well, of course, the medical technologist can also be penalized under the law. Okay? Next, lending or using the name of the licensed clinical laboratory or the head of the laboratory or medical technologist to unlicensed clinical laboratory. That's a self-explanatory. Unauthorized use of the name and signature of the pathologist and medical technologist to secure LTO. Okay. Nangyayari kaya yun? I don't know. Siguro, in some hospitals, kunwari may pathologist. Okay. What else? Reporting of a test result for a clinical specimen, even if the test was not actually performed. Okay. Transferring of results of tests done in an outside clinical laboratory to a result form from referring laboratory. Ano yun? Halimbawa, the test was performed in a other laboratory. Send out, no? Tapos, niresultahan mo gamit, you have the results already, binigay na sa iyo ng hospital, ng laboratory, na pinagsendan mo ng other test. Ibinigay na sa iyo yung laboratory result, and you make your own result using your results form. Mali po yun. Okay? That can be, you can be penalized under the law. Kasi, why will you do that? In the first place, your hospital is not the one who performed the test. Paano kung mali yun? Ito yung medtech na nakasain doon. May problema pa siya. Okay? And I have to emphasize this. Giving and receiving any commission, bonus, kickback, or rebate, or engaging in any split fee arrangement in any form whatsoever with any facility, physician, organization, agency, or person, either directly or indirectly, for patients referred to a clinical laboratory license by the DOH. Alam mo naman sa Pilipinas, kapag walang padulas, matagal, mabagal. I leave it there. You know what you know already what I mean. Okay? Administrative Order 2001 series of 1973. What is this? This is a law or this is a AO regarding the revised rules and regulation governing the registration in the Philippines. The former AO or the previous AO 27 series of 2007 is the newer version. No? Ito yung older version. Kasi 1973 pa ito. No? This is a rules, no, for the registration in the Philippines, promulgated for the purpose of preventing the operation maintenance of substandard, improperly managed, and poorly equipped clinical laboratories. Section 2 is about the scope. All laboratories testing for body secretions for possible pathologic organism present should be under the jurisdiction of this law. Now, the basic requirements for license to operate are the following: the name, citizenship, domicile of the head of the laboratory, the place, the municipality, the province where it is established, the name of the establishment, the name, the citizenship, and the domicile of the owner, the scope, the nature of the work to be undertaken, the statement of the applicant has complied with the business requirements under the other existing laws or ordinances that are necessary in the pursuance of the activity for a license are herein applied for, and a tax clearance from the preceding year. These are the requirements for the license to operate. Now, yung license to operate is 100 pesos, no? Uh, this is the license to open and operate a clinical laboratory that can be uh, renewed within 2 months of each year. Okay, and then there's a two and there's a two there is a 2 months grace period, no, for the renewal. And if you were not able to renew, you have a 10 pesos, no, not 10 pesos. Yeah. 10 pesos fine for every month. Yun yung penalty mo. 10 pesos lang. Okay? Now, Section 5, it is clearly stated there that no clinical laboratories is allowed to operate without a proper license from the DOH. Okay, tama naman yun. No? Bakit ka mag-operate ng laboratory kung wala kang lisensya? Hindi to pa may mera ng DOH. This is just a mandatory requirement, di ba? For our for our safety, for the safety of the patient, for the assurance of the patient that this laboratory is a licensed laboratory, duly licensed laboratory of the Department of Health. Bakit ba nagpapalaboratory ang mga pasyente? Because they are sick. Okay? And that is for their diagnosis. No person is permitted to manage, administer, or supervise a clinical laboratory unless he is a physician or a duly registered with the Board of Medical Examiners of the Republic of the Philippines. That is Section 6. Maliwanag yan. If you are going to define or if you were able to see the organizational chart, you know, an organizational chart of the laboratory, you will see there that the highest person in the laboratory is not the chief medical technologist. Actually, yung chief medtech ay para lang naman siyang ah, accessory gland. You cannot be the head, but you have to take the blame, you have to take the problem every time. More on administrative do things. Supervision of the clinical clinical routine, no? Yung mga ginagawa ng mga staff. But the head, maliwanag yan eh. The head of the laboratory is a physician, a pathologist to be exact, or a duly licensed physician uh, with a training, no, in clinical laboratory or in laboratory medicine. Now, in section 7, this is a definition of terms. And a clinical laboratory can be classified daw as a clinical pathology, anatomic pathology, and forensic pathology. Pero ngayon, doon sa bago nating AO, yung forensic pathology at saka anatomical pathology are fused as one. So the clinical laboratory can only be referred as clinical pathology and anatomic pathology. Forensic pathology is under the auspice already of anatomic pathology. Sana maliwanag yun. Ito kasi yung luma eh. Clinical pathology, clinical chemistry, hematology, microbiology, CM, serology, blood banking, radioisotope laboratory, endocrine laboratory. That's clinical. Kaya mayroon din tinatawag na clinical pathologist and anatomical pathologist. Okay? Yung mga pathologists natin, kung meron tayong PAMET, meron silang PSP. Hindi yun laruan. PSP stands for the Philippine Society of Pathologists. That's why in the results form, you will see there pathologist or clinical pathologist, anatomical pathologist. And after their MD, there is what we call PFPSP. FPSP. F stands for Fellow, Philippine Society of Pathologists, the highest membership of PSP or DPSP, DPSP, diplomate. Medyo pababa, no? Kaysa sa FPSP. Okay? So again, ito pong anatomic, no? Ito pong anatomic and your forensic pathology is already referred as your anatomical pathology. Section 7 also, paragraph B, about the head, the chief, director, and in charge or the OIC of the laboratory. Maliwanag po ito is duly licensed physician and a registered medical board examiner of the Philippines, a qualified laboratory medicine by having been certified by the Board of Pathology. The head can either be a anatomical pathologist or a clinical pathologist or both. Okay? But a clinical pathologist cannot be an anatomical pathologist. An anatomical pathologist can be a clinical pathologist. Now, paragraph C, section 7, ano naman po ito? Ito yung mga personnel, no? These are the personnel in the laboratory. Okay? So the head is the pathologist, the chief pathologist. We have what we call the associate pathologist. Associate pathologist is a licensed physician in laboratory medicine or qualified in laboratory medicine, certified by the Board of Pathology, yung tatawag nating PSP, under the direct supervision of the head, the chief, the director, and the OIC. We have the chief pathologist and we have there your associate pathologist. Okay? Meron pa rin tayong assistant pathologist. Ito naman, with at least 1 year training in a laboratory medicine. Okay? Of also a licensed physician under the direct supervision of the head, who is the chief pathologist. Medical technologist is the one who is performing the laboratory works. Alam niyo na yan. Laboratory technician, according to the AO 2007-27, dapat daw at least 2 years college with 12 units in laboratory, 1 year training in accredited laboratory. Pero maliwanag yun sa batas, na yung laboratory technicians, these are a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Medical Technology or Bachelor of Science in Medical Laboratory Science who are under boards. Yun po yung recent definition of who is a laboratory technicians. Laboratory aides are those or at least high school graduate na who help in the laboratory. Pwede ding college degree na hindi naman medtech but laboratory aid. Ano ba, ano ginagawa niya? Accepting the results form, encoding the transaction. Yun, mga laboratory aid ang tawag doon. Okay. Requirements for clinical laboratory, number 1 is physical plant. Marami yan, pero ito na lang, physical plant. Number 1, a clinical laboratory must or should be situated in a place separate from any commercial or non-medical establishment or residential quarters. It should be housed in a permanent building constructed of strong materials, preferably concrete or semi-concrete, tiled or linoleum finish. Requirement yan. Kasi mayroong inspection ang DOH, ang BRL. Dapat ganun. Okay? Ano pa yung sabi? The working place, or space rather, of the clinical laboratory of a hospital must correlate with the bed capacity. Kung yung laboratory, kung yung hospital mo is a 250 bed capacity, tapos ang medtech mo isa lang, patay tayo dyan. Okay? The ratio of the patient and the medical technologist must be appropriate. 1:10. 1 medtech to 10 patient. actually, dapat. Dapat nga mas maganda 1:5 eh. Okay. Well, of course, the laboratory. Kung ang laboratory mo ay isang kwarto lang na maliit at nandun ang lahat, patay tayo diyan. Okay? Adequate physical provisions of the safety of laboratory personnel must be provided for specific, especially considering the exposure to contaminant to infectious materials, obnoxious gases, as well as dangers due to inflammable reagents and fires of radioisotope substances. Okay? If needed, provisions must be made for sleeping quarters separate from laboratory area. Okay, laboratory space cannot be utilized as bleeding area or reception rooms for blood bank. Kaya mayroong separate bleeding area for blood banking. Now, section 12 is about reporting. Ito mahalaga ha. All laboratory requests is considered as a consultation between the requesting physician and the pathologist. Yan, I have here an example of a request form. Consultation yan eh. Yung nagre-request ng attending physician to the pathologist. And the results form is the answer of the pathologist doon sa attending physician. Okay? Now take note, no results shall be released without the signature of pathologist. Pero sir, bakit po ganun? Meron po ako nakita mga laboratory results na walang pirma ni pathologist. Hindi, sometimes that's electronically validated or electronically signed, but still, dapat merong signature ni pathologist kasi required yun. Okay? Pero meron naman silang disclaimer sometimes na nakalagay na this is a electronically validated result form. Okay? So, example of a result form is this one. Yan. Dapat makapirma si pathologist. Okay? Section 13, no? Ito yung reporting. Okay. Yung results form at saka yung request of a patient must be kept for 1 year. After 1 year, dadali na yan sa archive section ng hospital. Nandun na lahat yon. Yung anatomic and forensic laboratory results must be perpetual. Ibig sabihin lifetime. Ito yung maganda sa LIS, Laboratory Information System. If the printed results is already on the archives, you have the LIS, it will be easy for you to access the result. I-type mo lang pangalan, Juan de la Cruz. Lalabas na doon lahat ng transaction ni Juan de la Cruz. Lahat ng results form na meron si Juan de la Cruz. That's the promise of Laboratory Information System. Okay? Kasi kulang LIS at manual pa ang inyong ang resulta, patay tayo dyan. Tapos nandun na sa archive section ang inyong result form, ang inyong results. Kung sa archives, kahon-kahon yan. Per day, per month, per year. Kung 2000 pa, yung forensic, yung anatomical procedure, ilang years yung pagdadaanan mo? 20 years. 20 years. Diba? Could you imagine? Kaya kung may LIS, kung naka-perpetual man yan dyan sa archive mo, mas madali mo siyang mahahanap. Okay? There is also a memorandum order number 2009, number 0086, and this is about the implementation of external quality assessment program. This is what we are telling a while ago, the EQAP, as a regulatory requirement for licensing of clinical laboratories. Okay, under this administrative order or memorandum order of DOH, nag-describe siya ng 5 hospitals. No? There are 5 hospitals, designated hospitals, to be referred as the NRL. What is NRL? National Reference laboratories. Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng quality assessment? Quality assessment is important, okay? In the clinical laboratory. Pag-aralan natin 'to sa clinical chemistry. But to give you an idea, quality assessment is important in clinical laboratory. That is an assurance that you are performing your test with accuracy, precision, and reliability. Okay? Meron tayong tinatawag na IQC. IQC stands for Internal Quality Control. Within the hospital, yung iyong inter-laboratory quality control. Ito yung ito yung standard, no? Ito yung standard at ito yung control coming from the manufacturer of the manufacturer or the distributor of the machine. The standard is a known concentration similar to a biological sample. A control, it can be a positive control and negative control. The purpose of that is to know if your machine is capable to analyze samples within a normal limit and a samples outside the normal limit. Kapag naman sinabi natin intra, that's correct. Intralab, out, no? Sa labas. Wait, I think I'm confused. Intra, no, tama, intramurals, within, no, within the hospital, interlab, sa labas. Okay? So, I'm sorry. Intralab, ito yung ginagawa mo sa mismong sarili mo. Yan yung ICQ, no? From the manufacturer, no, of the machine na ginagamit mo. Kapag interlab, ito yung galing sa labas na laboratory. And that is what we call external quality control. Okay? In the Philippines, it is commonly named or commonly referred as NECWAS. External, a National External Quality Assurance Scheme. National External Quality Assurance Scheme. Okay? Now, like what I've said, the DOH under this memorandum order designated 5 hospitals or 5 laboratories to be our NRL. And they are the following. Number 1, Research Institute for Tropical Medicine. This is the reference laboratory for dengue, influenza, tuberculosis and other mycobacterium species, malaria and other parasites, bacterial enteric diseases, measles and other viral exanthems, mycology, enteroviruses, AMR is antimicrobial resistance, emerging diseases. And dagdag na natin si COVID-19. In other words, from the word itself, RITM is the reference laboratory for tropical diseases. What else? RITM is also the National Reference Laboratory for confirmatory testing of blood units. Next, San Lazaro. Next, RITM, I'm sorry. RITM can be, or RITM is located at Alabang. Okay? Sa Muntinlupa. Okay? Malapit sa, saan nga ba ito malapit? Medyo malapit sa ATC. Okay? Medyo malapit din sa festival. Doon lang din sa around the area na yon. Next is San Lazaro Hospital. Okay, San Lazaro Hospital is for HIV, AIDS, syphilis, and other STIs, infectious diseases. Okay, nakarating ako sa RITM, nakarating na rin ako sa San Lazaro. Kapag pumasok ka sa San Lazaro at hindi ka familiar sa lugar, mawawala ka. Ang daming pasikot-sikot. Okay? East Avenue, on the other hand, is the reference laboratory or the National Reference Laboratory for Environment, Occupational Health, and Toxicology and Micronutrient Assay. Toxicology, drug testing, East Avenue. May interns po tayo sa East Avenue. Nagkamaroon din tayo ng interns sa San Lazaro. Nakarating na rin ako sa East Avenue. I'm sure yun gusto mong malaman. Okay? Next in line is we have your National Kidney Institute for Tropical National Kidney and Transplant Institute or NKTI. Sir, nakarating ka na dyan? Oo. Now, this is for hematology, immunohematology, immunopathology, and anatomic pathology. Ang ganda rin ng laboratory sa NKTI. Actually, sa East Ave, ganun din. Okay, sa East Ave, parang papasok ka sa isang malaking area na mayroong kanya-kanyang room per section. If you were able to imagine St. Cabrini, parang ganun, pero mas malaki. Yung laboratory ng NKTI, na malawak yung kanilang reception area. Maraming windows. Okay? And the last reference laboratory is the Lung Center of the Philippines. This is for chemistry or biochemistry. Nakarating na po kayo dyan sa labas lang. Hindi pa nakakapasok. Okay? Yung Lung Center, NKTI, East Ave, nandun lang sila sa Quezon City Avenue. East Avenue, to be exact. Kaya nga East Avenue eh. Nandun lang sila sa Quezon City. Magkakalapit lang sila. Lung Center, ano yun sa puso? Heart, basta, yun. Okay, magkakalapit lang sila ng hospital along the East Avenue in Quezon City. Okay? So this is what we call the Clinical Laboratory Law, the RA 4688, and the related laws no in relation to the performance or in relation to governing clinical laboratory in the Philippines. So that's it. Thank you and God bless you all.